This is the second part of the Director's Review of 2025, using the themes of St. Francis's prayer, "Make me an instrument of your peace," and woodcuts by the artist Fritz Eichenberg. St. Francis encourages us to understand others as well as to be understood. And we do that throughout the year through a series of different courses and lectures. For example, the annual Paddy Carney Memorial Lecture, organised in association with the Gundy Development Trust and DUT, held last year at the Phoenix Settlement, and where the speaker was Deputy Minister for Constitutional Affairs, Geoffrey John. Many people come to visit us. Here, the current Irish ambassador continued the tradition of every Irish ambassador visiting the Denis Hurley Centre, learning about that great son of Ireland, Archbishop Hurley, and indeed Paddy Carney, and learning about the work we are doing on the streets of Durban. I conducted different talks around the city about Archbishop Hurley and about Paddy Carney here at St. Thomas's Anglican Church. And as a group, our staff continue to learn in different ways. For example, learning about each other's heritage on Heritage Day by enjoying food from different countries. Our booksellers are, of course, a great example of how we teach others and encourage others to learn. But a very specific example of that is the role of Eric, one of our booksellers, who has now become a tour guide at the Durban Holocaust Centre, and he's been working there for a number of years, giving tours to school groups who visit the centre. His experience as a tour guide meant that the South African Holocaust movement and sponsored him to visit Poland and join a group of Holocaust educators from around the world visiting Auschwitz and other sites related to the Holocaust. And to continue the international theme, we've also done talks in the UK, for example, in both Anglican and Catholic churches in the city of Birmingham, talking about the work that we do, but encouraging young people to reflect on what they can do in their communities and how they can bring the gospel to life. It is in pardoning that we are pardoned, says St. Francis. We're all in need of God's pardon, and in a few days' time we will be celebrating the start of Lent with the distribution of ashes. Here on last year's Ash Wednesday, one of our visiting Jesuit priests distributing ashes to homeless people gathered outside the Denis Hurley Centre. Pardoning puts us in mind of the legal sector, and we continue to work with the street law students from UKZN's School of Law, who come in each year to work with homeless people, to explain to them their rights, to explain to them how the law works, but also for them as students to learn the difference between what they hear about in theory in the classroom and what's experienced in practice on the streets of Durban. A culmination of that last year was our partnership with the School of Law in their very prestigious annual moot competition, the Ellie Newman Moot Competition, the oldest in the country, which in 2025 was themed around the subject of Paddy Carney's own incarceration 40 years ago, and using that as a platform for looking at the way in which legal systems are used to oppress people, and particularly the way in which, in the name of security, homeless people are oppressed in Durban. And that anniversary of Paddy's incarceration was also commemorated in a beautiful ecumenical and indeed interfaith service at St. James Anglican Church, where we held an evensong of psalms of suffering and hope, particularly inspired by the way in which Paddy himself had drawn on the book of Psalms for comfort during his incarceration. Where there is sadness, let me bring joy. The work of the Denis Hurley Centre isn't only grief and misery, but we love to bring joy into the lives of the people with whom we work. One of our one of our most loyal partners is the Centre for Creative Arts at UKZN, who organise a number of festivals through the year, including the film festival, and indeed host outreach of the festivals at the Dennis Hurley Centre. Here, part of their Poetry Africa Festival, with both professional poets coming in to share their poetry, but also encourage homeless people to share theirs. We continue to get support from many members of the arts community, including different classical and jazz musicians. Here, Melvin Peters and his jazz group hosting a wonderful fundraising jazz event at the Durban Jewish Club. We've had great fun raising funds through the year and hosted our first sing-along film screening. It was, of course, The Sound of Music, and we encouraged people to dress up as characters from the film. The barmaid at the Rumbelow Theatre did comment afterwards that she wasn't sure that all the people dressed as nuns really were nuns. And other ways in which we try to bring joy to the communities through books. Here, some of our booksellers involved in World Read Aloud Day, going with Illa Thompson, the book project coordinator, to visit the local school and read aloud to young people and encourage them to read for themselves. St. Francis prays that we will console others and also be consoled ourselves. How we look after our staff is critical because they can't help the many people who turn up at our door if they are not strengthened and if they are not motivated. So we conduct regular events each month to take care of our staff. Here, an event involving Musa Hlachwayo, our resident choreographer, who's using dance to help our staff members express themselves. We also like to go out and get inspired by other organisations, just as we hope that visitors who come to the Dennis Hurley Centre are inspired by us. One visit last year was to the Kwatintwa School for the Deaf, which was founded by Archbishop Hurley, and one of our hosts there was Amanda Clyde, who used to work with the Dennis Hurley Centre running our cafe for deaf young adults. We also encourage our staff members to learn useful life skills, and we worked with, in fact, one of the mayor's own photographers to teach our staff members how to take better photographs, how to frame better photographs. And then we went out to the Marion Hill site one day and gave them the chance to put that into practice in a photography competition, visiting the monastery, the cathedral, and the local schools. St. Francis reminds us that as Christians, we believe it is in dying that we are born to eternal life. And so each year, as part of this review, we look back and reflect on those who have passed from this world to a better world during the course of the last 12 months. In the bottom left-hand corner there, you will see a picture of Paddy Carney's niece, Sarah Carney, who was a regular here at the Dennis Hurley Centre, as she was present for the naming of Paddy Carney Way, as she sadly passed away at a young age during the course of the year. Another young death just above her is Matthew, whose mother, Priscilla Mackay, passed away just over a year ago. And Matthew and Priscilla were always regulars at this AGM, and you can see them there. And on Priscilla's right is Betsy Urla, a famous musician from UKZN, who also passed away in this last year. We were deeply saddened to lose Bishop Dino Gabriel, the Anglican Bishop of Natal, who after his retirement came back to the Dennis Hurley Centre and said, "I just want to be Father Dino and just be a volunteer." And given his incredible proficiency in Zulu, he sat with the homeless guys and chatted to them and supported them in ways that were really profound. One of our oldest volunteers, and indeed the very first winner of a Barry Wood Award for volunteering, is Eleanor Bremner, and she passed away in her early 90s during the course of the year. And then in the bottom right-hand corner, one of our great interfaith partners, Safura Khan from Sanzaf, a woman whose blindness in no way prevented her from doing things that many able-bodied people would be scared to do. Safura was a great inspiration, and we mourn her loss as well. We commend all of these people to the Lord, to his mercy, and to his care. And we named them, and also many of those who are unnamed, homeless people and refugees who died during the course of the year. They all get remembered, as well as donors who have passed away. We remember them at our annual memorial mass held at the Dennis Hurley Centre here with Father Shange from the cathedral. Another act of memorialisation took place in the Western Cape when I visited Hutgedacht, the famous retreat centre, and there was invited to plant an olive tree in memory of Paddy Carney. And I was pleased to see and to report back that the olive tree was planted right next to that in honour of Cos Desmond, who worked closely with Archbishop Hurley, and both of whose sons, Tim and Chris, have been great supporters and trustees of the Dennis Hurley Centre, and also close to Albert Nolan and to Beyers Naudé. It is in giving that we receive, St. Francis tells us, so it's appropriate to reflect on the financial situation of the Dennis Hurley Centre. Because everything that we do is only possible because of the generosity of those who give to us. We continue to benefit from great donations of food to help us deliver those 174,000 meals each year, but the number of meals has gone up and the amount of food that's donated has not gone up commensurately. So in fact, we had to spend over 100,000 Rand last year on food, the highest we've ever had to spend. The books that our booksellers sell, of course, are all donated, and we've had thousands and thousands of books over the course of the year, and many more are needed. We're particularly grateful to Bargain Books, who've been giving us brand new books that they can't sell, and to Tape Aids for the Blind, who've been clearing out their archives and have given us thousands of books that we can make sure get sold and help our booksellers to live and to keep off the streets. We benefit from the generosity of so many established partners, one of the most significant, Grace Family Church, who each year work with us to organise our annual street store event. They provide all the funding to make sure that the event happens. They organise the collection of literally thousands and thousands of items of clothing, and then bring in hundreds of volunteers to make sure that event goes off smoothly. And we've also had the benefit of some new and even random partners. For example, the 67 Blankets organisation that was created in honour of Nelson Mandela has been busy knitting scarves through the year. And so during the winter, they came down to the Dennis Hurley Centre with many more than 67 scarves and distributed those to homeless people who were waiting at the centre. All of those donations of goods are really important, but of course we still need money as well. I was delighted to be invited to share a platform with the prestigious organisation Gift of the Givers, where both of us received cheques for 50,000 Rand from Copper Chimney, a local restaurant in Durban, who are organising the Dubai Souk. We were able to raise 5.5 million Rand in 2025. That was 9% higher than in 2024. And you'll see from this pie chart how the money is spread between so many different areas. Roughly speaking, about a quarter comes from overseas, about a quarter comes from leveraging our own assets, either from venue hire or from interest, about a quarter comes from individuals, and about a quarter from organisations, whether businesses or grant makers or faith organisations. But some may be struck by how small the amount is that's coming from faith organisations, only just over 100,000 Rand. And that is really sad given how high the level of donations was from those groups before COVID. We recognise that many of them have suffered financially because of COVID, but now 6 years on, we hope that they will be able to look at their finances and find ways of continuing to support the Dennis Hurley Centre. The reason we need that is because though we raised 5.6 million, we spent 6.1 million. And that was actually 6% below what we had budgeted. Inevitably, our largest spend remains on our staffing, although we are very efficient in how we deliver services and we pay very low salaries for the work that gets delivered. And after that, spend on utilities, cleaning, and so on. What's most striking is how small the amount is for professional services, because we benefit hugely from pro bono support, particularly from ENS, our lawyers, and from Publicity Matters, our PR consultants. But our costs keep going up. Just because of inflation, you will see there how our expenses have gone up steadily over time, and we have to keep raising funds to keep abreast of that. We have the advantage of a sustainability fund that was raised during the COVID pandemic, and we're still able to use that. We're using that more slowly than we expected, but still we can't continue to have expenses go up if our income doesn't go up in line with it. And straightforwardly, the impact of inflation means that if somebody was giving us 100 Rand a month when we launched our Centenary Club in 2015, that's fantastic. They would actually have to be giving us more like 160 Rand a month in order to keep pace with inflation. Confident that the funds will come in to help us deliver our services in 2026, what are we looking forward to? How do we aim to be instruments of God's peace in 2026? Well, one area that we will continue to focus on is fighting for the rights, as the Constitution says, of all who live in South Africa. This beautiful photo from last year's AGM, where a copy of the preamble to the Constitution that was given to us by Justice Albie Sachs is being received here by current Constitutional Court Judge Leona Theron, one of our patrons, and another patron, Justice Navi Pillay, the former South African High Commissioner for Human Rights. The Mayor tells us that the municipality is open to learning and is committed to that. And we hope that we can go back to the situation we had a few years ago where the municipality was encouraging NGOs and homeless people and academics to gather together with city officials and province officials and really think about how we can tackle homelessness and not just resort to knee-jerk responses. Talking of the municipality, we will be preparing for municipal elections, which are due to take place towards the end of 2026. And as before, we will be working with the IEC, not just in Durban, but this time nationwide, to make sure that as many homeless people as possible are registered as voters and take seriously their responsibility as voters, and also challenge politicians to gather with homeless people and listen to them and learn from them. We're looking at creative ways of making new work opportunities, and we've just started a project working with the Centre for Creative Arts in which homeless people are engaged not just in cleaning the streets, but then in creating in creative expressions of life on the streets. And a great new opportunity has just come up for one of our booksellers. In fact, the very first bookseller who became part of our program, Kagiso, has just been offered a job as a teacher at Durban High School a few years after he completed his teaching qualification. Thanks to us and thanks to support from Mankosa, he has finally got a job, and we're delighted to wish him well in his new career. Given the need for funds, we will have many, many more fundraising events, and there will be another sing-along to the film Mamma Mia in a few months' time. But we also want to revive and relaunch our regular giving program and look at ways in which we can make it easier for people to give to us on a monthly basis and encourage them to do so. It makes a huge difference to our planning to know if we've got money coming in every month and know how much we can rely on. And as said earlier, we want to work with religious organizations, with churches and mosques and temples to try and return to the level of financial commitment that they did have to the Dennis Hurley Centre before COVID, and that we believe should be part of their mission as religious organisations here in Durban. And as director, I repeat my willingness to hand over the baton to a new director. We're continuing the process of searching, of investigating options, and trying to appoint the right person. In the meantime, I'm delighted for the support I get from Leanne as our Chief Operating Officer. So that means that many of the internal needs of the Dennis Hurley Centre are managed by her, and I can focus on my reduced hours on the external issues of the Dennis Hurley Centre. And so in closing, let me draw on those words of St. Francis, not just to love others, but to be loved. And this beautiful image of Jesus hosting the Last Supper with a group of disciples who were homeless men. Sadly, no women, but homeless men, black and white, able-bodied and crippled, gathering around the table of the Last Supper. A chance to say thank you to our board members and managers. This photograph is a couple of years old and a few of our trustees are missing from it, but it's wonderful to be able to thank our trustees for the great work that they do, entirely unpaid, giving their expertise and their experience for the benefit of the Hurley Centre and also of our managers. A particular thank you to Sister Kathy, who has been with us for the last 8 years and has been the coordinator of the Nkosinathi project. She's now been promoted to be the provincial superior of the Holy Family Sisters in Southern Africa and has moved to Johannesburg, hence the blankets to keep her warm during the cold months up there. We miss Sister Kathy greatly, but we're delighted that her departure was an opportunity for a number of staff in the Dennis Hurley Centre to receive promotion, well deserved for the work that they've done. A big thank you to all of our volunteers. We had a particular opportunity to thank two of our oldest and most loyal volunteers, one of them my mother, Phil Perrier from the UK, and the other Shirley Masrajada here in Durban. Both of them who in their 80s, Shirley now in her 90s, have supported the Dennis Hurley Centre through fundraising, and in their honour we have named our kitchen Phil and Shirley's Kitchen so that their names will always be associated with the task of sharing food which they. So let me close by listing all of the staff and full-time volunteers who've helped us deliver our work over the last year. A huge thank you to all of them, and also to the many partner organisations that have continued to work with us: faith partners, educational partners, arts partners, NGO partners, media partners, corporate partners, funding partners, government partners, and overseas partners. Without their support and without their help, we wouldn't be able to deliver the huge range of work that we do. And thank you to you for listening.